I did that whole video with something in my teeth. Cool. Hi guys! Welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime!
Crue Trime!
Crue Trime! If you're new here, hi! Welcome. My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup at the same time. So if you are into that combination, you're in the right place. So make sure that you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification, do all of the things so that you never miss one of my uploads. Although, very reliable, okay? Big Virgo energy around here. So what I've been doing for the past couple of months is telling a story from a different state in the United States, and we're gonna try to get to all of them. So today's story takes us to the birthplace of a lot of really notable Americans, like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Francis Scott Key and Edgar Allan Poe. It's also the namesake of my special furry prince, Murray. All right, I'm gonna put on my best Delco accent and hold on to your butts. It's time to put your bean seat on. We're going down the ocean, hon. How'd I do? Huh? We're going to Maryland. Maryland. So I always do this disclaimer. I don't talk about the makeup or the products that I'm using as I'm using them, but just check the description box because everything is linked just for you. This is a really good one and it's a nice change of pace. Happy ending, spoiler alert. So let's get started. On July 25th, 1984, in the small community of Rosedale, Maryland, which is northeast of Baltimore, a little girl went missing. It was around 11 a.m. that morning when 9-year-old Dawn Hamilton went outside to play with her friends. Back then, 1984, kids just were free to run around outside and everybody felt pretty safe with that. I think most of us remember that in our childhood. I know I definitely had a childhood like that where you just leave for the day. No phones, no notes, no plan of events. You just leave and then come home at some point to eat, probably. And then again when the streetlights come on. Anyways, Dawn Venice Hamilton was born to Tony and Thomas. Tony was a dancer and Thomas was an electrician. Their marriage was not good. They were very young as well. Tony was only 17 at the time, so they weren't ready to raise a child, so they ended up actually giving her to the neighbor. That might sound pretty bad, but this neighbor was actually a very dear friend of theirs and was the perfect person to raise Dawn. She was 41-year-old Casimira Equerdo Spanogle. Wow, I'm butchering that name. So sorry. Well, she went by Mercy. She was from the Philippines, and she lived at the Fontana Village Apartments, where the Hamiltons lived. Mercy was the mother of a teenage daughter who she lost in a car accident 2 years before this, so Dawn really was her little girl. Mercy actually got legal custody of Dawn through social services and later tried to adopt her, but Thomas, the father, would not allow it. He saw her regularly and he worked out a visitation plan with Mercy. So in the late morning, all the kids in the neighborhood are outside playing. Later that afternoon, some of the other kids came back, but Dawn didn't. So one of the parents went out looking for her. She was worried. She called Dawn's dad, Thomas, who was at work, and he came home right away. They also went ahead and called the police because they were in a panic. Okay, so like I said, Thomas came home from work. He decided to stop at a creek in like a wooded area that was along the way. He had saw a few people and asked everybody if they had seen the sweet little 9-year-old girl with a page boy haircut. Nobody had, but they checked the area because it was the beginning of the Rosedale Forest nearby where he and Dawn had explored before. Side note, do kids still hang out in the woods? I feel like we spent a lot of time in the woods as kids. Just me? Okay, anyways, so while looking in the woods, Thomas came upon some clothing hanging on a tree branch, and his heart stopped. It was Dawn's shorts and underwear, and it looked like they had been just like thrown up, and caught on a branch. So he climbed up to retrieve them, but he didn't see anything else or anyone else. There was, police in the area helping to look for Dawn, so he took the clothes straight away to the police. This is around like the Becky's Pond area. Well, when he gave the clothes to the police, everybody kind of went silent. This was not a good sign. Around 2:30 later that afternoon, just further into the woods, Dawn's body was found. She was wearing a yellow pullover shirt and white socks with pink trim. She was face down, having been severely beaten about the head and body with a big rock. She had been strangled by the killer by stepping on her throat. There was actually a footprint across her neck. She had also been sexually assaulted and violated with a stick. So after Dawn's body was discovered, the entire town was pretty much interviewed, and many people said many different things. The entire apartment complex was interviewed place by place. The police encountered 2 young boys aged 10 and 7. They had been fishing at Becky's Pond that day, and they say that they saw her. So she came up to them and, asked had they seen her friend. Remember, she's playing hide and seek. But the boys were like preoccupied with the turtle that they had just caught, so they were like, no, we're good. All set. But a man appeared, some man that they didn't know. The man offered to help Dawn find her friends, so they walked off together into the forest. The boys described the man as 6'5", white, with curly blonde hair and a bushy mustache, and he was skinny and tan. The 2 boys were the best eyewitnesses that, the investigation had, so they brought them in for a composite sketch. And this isn't like an artist rendering, a person that you describe features to and they draw it, This was an identikit. So identikit is like a program, right? It's like a collection of facial features chosen from a menu. Eyes, nose, chin, hair, face shape, jaws, and then they kind of Frankenstein the face together. The 2 boys actually produced different faces, but then what they did is combine them into third face, I guess. And the boys, they said from the beginning that composite just wasn't right, but close enough, I guess, and it got published anyways. It was blasted out on the news, it was posted on telephone poles and in grocery stores, everywhere. I mean, what could go wrong? Well, the police received tons of calls, and one of the calls was a tip from a woman claiming that the face looked like their neighbor. Well, their neighbor was a 6-foot-tall, red-headed, burly neighbor. The kids in the woods saw a tall, skinny, blonde man. So why did the police even proceed? Who knows? Anyways, the police located this neighbor and they approached him for questioning. The man's name? Kirk Bloodsworth. Kirk Noble Bloodsworth was born on October 31st, 1960, Halloween birthday. Jealous. He was born in Maryland. He came from a long line of watermen. He worked on a boat with his dad, harvesting fish and shellfish. Before he kind of settled into that, though, he decided to enlist in the Marine Corps. He ended up serving 1 term, 4 years, before deciding that really wasn't for him. He was honorably discharged, and right after leaving the service, the now 22-year-old Kirk moved back to Maryland, settling in Cambridge and marrying a woman named Wanda. Well, he imagined his future was to own a boat and live on the water. I mean, he literally grew up on the water. Well, Wanda wasn't into the waterman life. She did not want to live out on the Eastern Shore, so things they weren't working out, and she moved back home to Baltimore with her family. Well, Kirk wanted her back. He really loved her, and he camped out with a cousin in Baltimore while he and Wanda tried to work through things, but that wasn't working out. In the meantime, this news story broke about this little girl who had been murdered. The coverage was all over the news, and Kirk was horrified, just like everyone else. On Wednesday, August 8th, 1984, the police came by to talk to Kirk. Kirk had never been in any kind of trouble at all, so he had nothing to hide. He absolutely cooperated, answering their questions and all of those things, and he denied involvement from the start, of course. I'll be right back. Okay. So Kirk was talking to the police, and they're in the interrogation room, right? Well, then the police produced a rock, like maybe it was like a chunk of concrete or whatever, but it had like a stain on it that looked like blood. And they also produced a pair of underwears, panties, like little kids' underwear. Definitely a power move, definitely meant to intimidate, a suspected child killer. They asked Kirk, have you heard of this murder? And he's like, yeah, everyone has. Well, in the interrogation, as they do, the police twisted Kurt's words all around. they're convinced that they have the right guy, so no matter what he said, they're gonna make it into what they want it to be, right? They ask you questions over and over and over, but in different ways, trying to like trip you up or just get the answer that they're looking for. Well, Kirk never relented. Ever. Eventually, the questioning reached the end, and they took a photograph of Kirk with a Polaroid camera and sent him on his way. On Thursday, August 9th, 1984, the Baltimore County Police arrived to arrest Kirk. Well, this time he was back in Cambridge. He was staying with a friend. The police arrived. They banged on the doors. Boom, boom, boom. And by the way, it was like 2:45 in the morning. I'm not sure why that's necessary, but anyway, they said, quote, "Step outside, Mr. Bloodsworth. You're under arrest for the first-degree murder of Dawn Venice Hamilton, you son of a bitch." Well, that's not good. The following Monday, so Kirk was in jail all weekend. So the following Monday, Kirk participated in a police lineup made up of 6 men total. By the way, many of those eyewitnesses in the case had spent that weekend watching Kirk's arrest on the evening news.
Mr. Bloodsworth, you want to make any statement at all?
Move out of the way, please. Guilty.
Also, the 2 little boys that had created the composite drawing didn't identify anyone in that lineup. But then, their parents called the police later to say that they had made a mistake. The killer was number 6 in the lineup, Kirk Bloodsworth. What the fuck? Alright, so Kirk has been arrested and identified as the main suspect in this case. There's no physical evidence. No hair. No blood. No semen. No fibers. No nothing. The case went to trial anyways. So those 2 young boys, they were the main eyewitnesses, yet, they couldn't pull Kirk out of a 6-person lineup until their parents said they pulled them out. Well, they testified in open court, saying that they saw Kirk walk off into the woods with Dawn. Another woman named Donna Ferguson testified that she saw Dawn talking with Kirk near the woods around 10:30 a.m. that day. A man named James Keller said that he was driving down Fontana Lane near the scene of the murder at 6:30 a.m. when he saw a man standing by the side of the road. That's it. Well, never mind that Kirk produced no less than 10 people who provided, a backup to his alibi, but I guess that doesn't matter. Well, after a 2-week trial, a jury convicted Kirk Bloodsworth of the rape and murder of Dawn Hamilton, and they sentenced him to death. Kirk was sent to the Maryland prison in Baltimore. Inmates that serve time for messing around with kids are very unpopular in prison, if you know what I'm saying. So, aside from knowing that he was innocent. By the way, have I said that yet? Kirk was innocent, okay? He wasn't there. He didn't do it. Anyways, so aside from knowing that he was innocent, Kirk had nothing. No one believed him. Even one of his own attorneys encouraged him to come clean before trial. So, of course, Kirk appealed immediately. He was innocent, for sure. The original case, the verdict was actually overturned on appeal based on a Brady violation, and that means that evidence that would have benefited his defense was withheld. So, he had a second trial, but get this! All the same witnesses, all the same evidence. He was convicted again and sentenced to death again. Now, there are plenty of people who are like, well, he was convicted twice. So, what do you mean he's innocent? Alright, so while Kirk was in prison, he worked in the prison library. He read all the time, and sometimes he was just passing the time, sometimes he was doing research for the case, or, just for the freedom of it. Kirk discovered a book called The Blooding by Joseph Wambaugh. The Blooding is based on a true story. It describes a forensic scientist named Alec Jeffreys who used genetic fingerprinting, or DNA mapping, to identify a killer. Okay, so nowadays we all have a pretty basic knowledge of DNA, right? Every single person has a unique DNA profile, like a fingerprint. So Alec Jeffreys is a pioneer of genetic fingerprinting. What he did was he used the evidence that had been discovered in this crime scene. I think it was like like a rape and murder situation. So he and a team took samples, blood samples from every male in this village, over 3,000 men in like also the surrounding areas. And bingo bango, they found a match, a man named Colin Pitchfork. That's a great name for a murderer, right? Well, Mr. Pitchfork was the first man on Earth to be convicted of a crime using DNA evidence. DNA evidence. Well, that wasn't really like a thing, when Kirk's case went to trial. Well, this got Kirk's wheels turning. What if the same technology that was used to locate somebody could be used to eliminate him as a suspect? So Kirk wrote to the prosecutor requesting that the evidence in the case be tested, DNA tested. She got back to him pretty quickly and said, "We regret to inform you that the samples were inadvertently destroyed." Bitch. Okay, but it wasn't destroyed. It was just lost. I don't even know what's worse, to be honest. Kirk started writing letters. And, by the way, where did this man get the give a fucks to keep going? Like, superhuman. Okay, so he's like writing letters like crazy to senators, to representatives, to the president, Willie Nelson. Kirk needed help. Assuming that they could locate the evidence, the testing was going to cost like $10,000 to $12,000. Enter Bob Morin. So Bob is like a super lawyer, right? And he agreed to take Kurt's case. That was one of the letters that Kirk wrote, and he showed up one day to talk to him, and he agreed to take the case for free. Not only does Kurt have an amazing super lawyer, he's got the full force of that law firm behind him. They just had to get the evidence. Well, Bob's on the case. He keeps going back to the courthouse where the evidence is kept and asking for it. And they just keep telling him, we don't have it, we don't have it, we don't have it. And he's going back and talking to Kurt and saying, I can't find it. And Kurt's like, keep saying Kurt. It's Kirk. Kirk with a K. Anyways, he's going back and telling Kirk, they just don't have it. I don't know what to tell you, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, long story short, one afternoon, Bob is at the courthouse looking for the evidence again. Well, while he was there, he bumped into some wide-eyed law clerk, probably somebody that recognized him or was impressed by him, whatever. And he's like, what are you doing here, Bob? And he's like, oh, I'm just here looking for that Hamilton case evidence again. Well, the law clerk was like, oh, I know where that is. It's in the judge's chambers in the closet.
That's suspicious.
Huh? Squinting at you, Judge, with the evidence in your closet. Well, that whole box of evidence was sent to the genetic lab for testing, and the results came back. Guess what? Kirk was not a match for any of that evidence. You don't say. You don't say. On June 28th, 1993, Kirk Noble Bloodsworth was exonerated, and he was released from prison after serving 8 years, 11 months, and 19 days. But wait, there's more. Directly because of Kirk's efforts, and he fought for 10 years before it happened. The same DNA testing that saved his life helped find the real killer of Don Hamilton. The sample from the Hamilton case was put into CODIS, which is an acronym. It means Combined DNA Index System. And a match was found. But hang on a second. So that system came online in like 1993 or something? They had these samples from, all of the prisoners and all of the criminals and things that they've collected all go in this database so that they can, cross-match them to other crimes that pop up. They had it for like 10 years before they actually bothered to match any of it. Annoying. The match was a man named Kimberly Shea Ruffner. And what's truly wild is that Kirk knew that guy, because he had served time in prison with him. So this guy, Kimberly Ruffner, was a monstrous piece of shit, right? He had been charged twice with 2 attempted rapes on children before Dawn and had been let go. Also, Kimberly's physical appearance matched way closer with that description of Dawn's killer than Kirk ever did. In fact, during the investigation, the early stages after Dawn's murder, this Kimberly person was a person of interest. Once Kirk was arrested, they were like, well, oh well, Moving on. So Kimberly Ruffner was serving a prison term. He was actually serving a 45-year sentence for the rape and stabbing of another young girl when Kirk met him. After his DNA profile was matched to the evidence found in the Dawn Hamilton murder, he pled guilty and was sentenced to life. And that sentence will begin when he completes that 45-year sentence. Shake it up. Ooh. On October 30th, 2004, the Justice for All Act, Public Law number 108-405, authorized the establishment of the Kirk Bloodsworth Post-Conviction DNA Testing Grant Program. That's a mouthful. It provides funding to the states to the tune of $25 million to help defray the cost associated with post-conviction DNA testing. The act also specifically outlined the plan to improve the quality of prosecution and defense representation in capital cases. Lipstick all over my teeth. Because of course there is. It also increases the maximum amount of money that the United States may be required to pay for wrongfully incarcerating people, and it increased the funding to reduce the backlog of crime scene evidence awaiting analysis in labs. Kirk Bloodsworth said, quote, "There is no need to worry about punishing the worst of the worst if you have to walk over the innocent to do it." Well said, Kirk. Well said. I mean, I agree. I'm not an advocate of the death penalty. Like it or not, I just think that the system is too flawed, you know, for that to be a thing. And I think it's weird. Let's kill someone because they killed someone? Seems weird to me. On March 15th, 2013, the Maryland General Assembly passed Senate Bill 276, abolishing the death penalty in the state of Maryland. Anybody that was on death row, and there were 5 at the time, had their sentences commuted to life without parole. And nearly 30 years after being exonerated and released from being wrongfully incarcerated for over 8 years, Kirk Bloodsworth got paid. Maryland's Board of Public Works awarded him just over $400,000 in compensation for the time he spent in prison. Is that enough? Nah. And that, friends, is the incredible story of Kirk Bloodsworth. If you're interested in any of the makeup that I used on camera today, just check in the description box. Everything is linked for you, including some coupon codes and other fun things. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here on YouTube every week, and you can follow me on the other social channels as well. I'm settling in around here, a little life update, little quick life update. I'm settling in. Do you guys want to do a Q&A? That's a question. Do you guys have any cues for me? Do you want like a get ready with me? Do you want just like a chatty catch up? Let me know. That is it for now. I will catch you in the next video. Bye! Down the ocean. Down the ocean. We're going down the ocean. Teeth are looking Cornish. Fall out of my face! Ah! Ferguson testified. She testified. It's a new way to do it. Don't like that. Fish and selfish. Selfish. Harvesting selfish.